It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Wes Webster.
Hello all.
How are you guys doing?
Oh, doing all right.
Same here. How about you?
I'm here. We were hoping to have Eddie Medina join us once again, but unfortunately, real-world responsibilities prevent him from doing that. It's called deadlines. So we miss you, Eddie. We'll have you on here again real soon. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, this week I have begun research for our secret project that's coming up soon.
Okay.
Fortunately, this involves watching several really cool movies, so I'm not going to go into the details because that's why I called it a secret project, and it won't really be a secret when it happens. But whatever. But yes, I have watched one of the movies that I was loaned so generously. One that I saw a long time ago, and turns out it's pretty good still. So
yeah, I need to kind of work on that secret project myself. I'll probably do that here in the next couple of days, just as a refresher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do what we're gonna do without having seen these at all. Because it's just been so long since I've seen some of them.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for me, some of these I've caught in the last couple of months, so that's helped me out. But there's 2 or 3 of them that I need to go back and go, okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Les?
I've got nothing. It was a quiet weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't do much of anything.
How about, did you go to Sci-Fi Meetup?
Yes, I think there were about 6 of us there.
Cool.
It was interesting. But it got to the raunchy point and it was time for me to leave.
See,
it went dark.
Les always leaves when the strippers show up.
The thing was, I was headed for the ATM. By the time I got back, they were all gone.
Probably another Coke run.
Wow.
I can't believe that was stated, but okay.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, I missed it.
The fun we have. I was not there, for the record. That was not my deal. That's why I can make fun.
Well, I wasn't there either. Fortunately, I was, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, happened to be out of town, took a little short trip, and glad to be back. I'm glad to be home, and I'm glad to be with you guys recording another episode of our podcast.
Wow, that was totally unprompted.
Totally unprompted. Before we get into this week's topics, take a couple minutes to thank our sponsors. First off, we want to thank Peter Smetty of Alterna Comics and their digital catalog Make Mine Indie. The summer catalog is currently available. It's 147 pages of print, digital, and web comics. You can find previews, reviews, interviews, a lot of good stuff there. It's totally free. If you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors page, you'll see a logo for Make Mine Indie, and there will be a link there. And you can download either a PDF or a CBZ file. These are books that are only going to be available, more than likely going to be through the individual publishers' websites that are not available through Diamond, or some of them are not available through Diamond. Some of them may be available now as print. Some of them are so, but more than likely not. But some really cool stuff. Mikey and I have done some reviews on some of these books, and there's a ton of others we like to check out. So you should go check them out. So we thank them for their support. I'd also like to thank Things from Another World for being a sponsor of the Fellowship. A lot of great deals going on right now. They're evergreen deals of 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, and 30% off pre-order manga titles, 50% off Nick and Dent comics and trades, and then up to 70% off certain comics, graphic novels, collectibles, and other goodies. So while you're on our sponsors page, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see information about Things from Another World and some links there. So if you click on those, they'll take you to their website. Let them know that we sent you their way, and take advantage of some of these great deals that they're running.
Hey, my name is Peter Cimetti. I'm publisher of Alterna Comics, and you're listening to the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast.
All righty. For this week, we are taking a couple moments, we're taking more than a few moments. We're going to take maybe an hour or so. We'll see. To celebrate a milestone birthday of a beloved comic book creator. August 28th will be the 100th anniversary of the birth of Jack Kirby. And that name should be a familiar one to most of y'all. If it may be just familiar within the last couple of years because of some of the movies, hopefully some of the celebrations that the stores are doing for the centennial. But Kirby has created or co-created a ton of characters that are still popular to this day. He's one of the founding fathers of Marvel. Him, along with Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, just to name a couple others, they're the ones to start up the Marvel that we know today. Obviously, with the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, and most of the members of the Avengers were his co-creation. Captain America, which he co-created with Joe Simon. He also co-created Fighting American and Guardian. He did. It's kind of funny if you go back and look at some of the characters from the 40s, and it's like Simon and Kirby kind of kept recreating the wheel. They created Captain America, and then they did versions of Captain America. But for DC, he created Challengers of the Unknown, which, if you're not familiar with them, if you're familiar with the Fantastic Four, it's the same principle, except for they came first and they did not have powers. They were just regular Joes with specific skill sets that fought monsters every month. Also for DC, he created Darkseid in the New Gods, Mr. Miracle, Orion, and the others. He created the Demon Etrigan, OMAC, Commandy. I can spend another 20 or 30 minutes just labeling off some of the characters he created. But we just kind of wanted to take some time to kind of stand back and kind of appreciate what he did and honor his birthday. Who'd like to go first?
I'll take it. Kirby was so instrumental in the field of comic books. He was the one that you've already said that he was co-creator of so many items, and he was the defining artist of the 60s and early 70s. Everybody wanted their work to look like Kirby's. He earned the title King, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy. He was taking comics in new directions. Let's see, if I remember correctly, he began Captain America with Joe Simon, and that was under Timely, I believe, Timely magazine. And then from him, gosh, what can I say, Thomas? All I'm doing is repeating you, because he was just the mainstay. When he did his DC work with the Challengers, I was a kid, and I was just so taken in by this. These guys didn't have the capes, and they didn't have the powers, like you said, yet they were somebody, and they resembled Batman in the fact that you could be this guy. You could be Ace or Prof or Rocky or Red without a problem. All you had to do was get the physical stamina. But to kids, it was something cool that you could be part of. With Marvel, of course, so many things. Timely became Atlas, and Atlas became Marvel. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. I don't know how I can do anything but iterate what's already been said. And he was somebody I enjoyed thoroughly, an artist I looked up to. I just think that his style, his innovations were what made Marvel the brand it was early on, because it was mainly DC at that time when Marvel stepped up and brought you Fantastic Four, the Avengers later, the return of Captain America, and then the creations that spawned from all that. I would say there are, 200, at least 200 characters in the Marvel universe alone that Kirby was part of. Because Kirby first brought you Iron Man, and he brought you Daredevil, and then those were taken over by other artists, but he was the starting point.
Yeah. It's almost weird at this point to think about how much of an impact he had. I mean, you can't, there's not a parallel for it today, because there's so many people, so many very talented people, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining that the talent pool is diluted. It's not. But there's so many people creating things now that it's hard to imagine that one guy had so much to do with essentially building the foundation of what is modern comics. I mean, over like a 40-year span, he was just constantly creating and helping to create brand new worlds. And just, basically just for a normal paycheck. I mean, you can't even imagine that today. That's not even possible anymore. I mean, to have the impact that he had, nobody can do that. Nobody. There's not even anybody who could come close. I mean, your big impact people are either just working so much that it's crazy and still aren't having that kind of impact, or it's the cool new stuff is coming in from outside. And I mean, Kirby was as entrenched in the comics process as anybody, even back then. I mean, the idea that he had a hand in so many of those characters, I mean, it almost gives the impression that he was like the only artist they had at times. And that can't be right. I mean, there are probably times when he was the only artist. I mean, back when he and Simon created Captain America, I mean, how many artists did they have? I mean, it was probably a pretty small outfit. But yeah, it's just, the impact is just huge. And yes, we're still seeing the ripples today, which is kind of awesome, really.
And his art, really, especially his art for Marvel, it set the tone. It's like, this is what you're going to expect from us. It's going to be action-packed. There's going to be drama. There's going to be suspense. It's it's going to be a fun adventure. Doesn't matter who the characters are. It's just, and that had to be, as me reading those stories as a kid, even as reprinted forms, it was amazing. It was just, I would read the current day stuff, but I would read those and I'm like, oh wow, it's just some kind of jam-packed adventure. Whether it's the Fantastic Four going into the negative zone, or the X-Men battling Magneto to stop another threat, it just, the art just set a tone and said, this is what you're going to expect from us. And I'm not saying it was just him. It was, he did most of the stuff. I mean, you got to admit that Steve Ditko and Don Heck and Wally Wood and some of the other ones that were there, Bill Everett and some of those that were there back in the early days, they helped set that tone as well. But I mean, it was Kirby. And I think we've had this discussion before about how the process of doing the comic back then, the Marvel way, as they called it. Stan, who is credited as writer for just about all these books back in the day, apparently would just come up, they kind of just have a general idea of what was going to happen in this book, and then there goes Jack or Steve or whoever off in the corner and just starts filling in all the details literally by drawing them. So I mean, I think we've talked about this before, that Stan was more of a plotter, and then the artist would go in and actually do in the details of the story as well as draw it. Then Stan would come back and then do the dialogue as well as edit. But that's an awful lot of freedom, and Kirby was doing most of the books back in the day, back in the 60s.
All right, back as Marvel is kind of becoming what we know of as Marvel.
Right. That's mind-blowing.
It is. And see, the cool thing, you're talking about the tone he set. I don't know how much of an effect the tone he set would have had it not been such an accessible tone. He had, I mean, and I'll to probably till my dying day get uncomfortable talking about art, but the style he used, the style that, I mean, his style, the way he drew things, the way things looked when he drew them, it had just the right blend of the realism and the whatever it takes to actually draw a Supers book. it's just it. He managed to do it in a way that, I can't. I mean, people at this point, years on, you might find somebody who will say that Kirby's art is not exciting or not interesting on whatever some specific artistic level. But man, people like it. Everybody, just about everybody likes Kirby's art. I mean, or at least appreciates that it's got that degree of accessibility, that that's the way it should look. And I don't know how natural it was for the guy to do, but he did it. He did it consistently for a very long time. And it's the kind of subtle thing that sometimes people won't notice, but it's the kind of thing that makes a series of comics into a world. It's that world building thing. And it's really important, and it's a really big part of how Marvel became Marvel that maybe not everybody kind of realizes. Does that even make sense?
No, maybe.
Oh, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And it wasn't just the super stuff, although I mean it was primarily that back before then, obviously when the supers weren't around, he was doing westerns and sci-fi and all that kind of stuff. And his approach to sci-fi was incredible. Just the kind of detail and the imagination that he threw into every page. Kind of hard for me to describe. It's kind of cool to go back and look at some of that work. He actually adapted the 2001 movie, and then actually took off with original stories after that. I don't think it was around for a long period of time, but I remember seeing those. I had the Treasury edition of the adaptation, and looking at some of the art as a, what is it, less 11 by 12 size?
Yeah.
And him doing a splash page or just a gigantic panel was incredible. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Les, wasn't it in the late 60s, early 70s where he kind of adapted some of he would use some photo.
When he was doing the gosh, what can I say? I know what you're talking about.
Where you could tell it's photographic images or something like that, but there was also his artwork involved with it too.
Yeah.
I don't think that had been done before, and I don't think it's been done since. Or if it has, it's been very rare.
I was going to say, didn't Ralph Bakshi do some of that too?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, a little later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a few years later.
But that's, I'm not sure if there's been a whole lot more than that, but
not on any large scale or anything. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, he was still innovating.
Yep.
In his 60s, basically. Still coming up with new and interesting ways to do stuff.
All right. What is your favorite story? Kirby story, or a story that involves Kirby either as a writer or artist or both? Do you have one?
Maybe the series he did in Fantastic Four, A Blind Man Shall Lead Them. To me, this was a good story. It featured two characters I really liked, and I thought it presented itself very well in lining out a whole story.
This may be a little bit of a cop-out, As I get a mic. Coming of Galactus. Those couple issues introducing Silver Surfer and then Threat of Galactus. That was incredible. It was a great story, and of course the art. I've kind of had this talk before about people who were so upset about Galactus in the Fantastic Four film being just a cloud entity and not a human being. I'm like, do you really want to see a giant man in blue and purple armor? It looks great on the page. It looks awesome on the page, but you put it in that third dimension, I don't think it works.
No, it doesn't.
Right, I agree. And I mean, I think an argument could be made that the only reason it worked then was because it was 50, 60 years ago, and there wasn't as much. I mean, there was science fiction stuff going on. I mean, science fiction movies were starting to get big, but there was no frame of reference for it at that point. And so, I mean, the big purple Galactus guy was off the wall enough and kind of new and innovative enough at the time to make an impact. The fact that there was this creature that was so big he's going to suck all of the life force out of an entire planet for dinner. I mean, that's a huge science-y type conundrum type situation. Things have progressed to the point now, I mean, to where, 10 years ago, that would have been hokey as hell. But the idea that there is what is essentially a predator feeding on entire planets, that's a pretty wild science fiction concept. And like you said, that particular story is kind of a cool little crossover between the super stuff he was doing and that sci-fi stuff that it seems like maybe he wanted to do more of at the time. I mean,
good point.
You say you're going to cop out on this one. I've got an even worse cop out because I am admittedly not as intimately familiar with all of his work, so I don't know that I have a favorite story. What I have is my initial intro to comics was pretty Marvel heavy, and so what I have is the fact that I mean, there wouldn't have been a Marvel Comics without him. And so, I mean, I came in, when I came in back in we'll call it late 80s, it was pretty X-Men heavy, and he was a big part of creating the X-Men.
Yep.
So, I mean, clearly I kind of have to lean towards that as quote-unquote favorite, because I mean, I wouldn't have. I don't want to say I wouldn't have had any interest in comics if it hadn't been for the X-Men, but that was where I came in. That was the door that I used, and he built that door, So that's kind of my soft spot.
Well, let's look at the characters then. Do you have favorite characters that he had created?
That's tough. Well, I'm a big FF fan, so they're definitely there. Wow. I guess I'll have to go with them. Of course, Challengers, which you can, if you see the relationship, you can see why I like one as well as the other. X-Men. I mean, I like the classic X-Men. I mean, I didn't really get into them until long after he was gone, and it was the age of Claremont and Byrne, and then several other artists after Byrne left. But I had gone back and was reading classic X-Men, and I like those characters as well. Whether it's, Beast or Angel. Never have been a big Cyclops fan. Nothing personal to Scott, but So I guess there's a few of them right there. How about you?
I think I would have to pick one that I'd like to think that he created this character to be as flexible as he turned out to be over time. I really hope he did. I hope he intended for other writers and artists to kind of add their own flair to this character. And the character that I'm going to pick is Magneto, because it's a character that was, like I said, I hope designed to be one that could carefully evolve over time to kind of be the sort, and admittedly, the sort of bad guy that would just that ever-present bad guy. To be honest, I think of him in the same vein as Dr. Doom, and honestly, another Kirby collaboration. But the two of them are bad guys that, given the right set of circumstances, don't necessarily have to be bad guys, but can be really bad guys and can adapt to just an unlimited number of situations. And that's, I mean, whether that was done from a sense of minimalism on their part at the time, or with the intent of creating really flexible characters, worked out either way.
How about you, Les?
Well, I think mine is the Challengers. I think that was something that appealed to young boys when it first came out. In the world of Marvel, there are so many choices that I'm going to have to go with Fantastic Four. Another version of the Challengers, as you said before, but in the standard Marvel way, you had characters with angst, and these four fit that. Yet they were four people that were so compatible together, like the Challengers were at DC. And I thought that it was a series that really gave Kirby the chance to do his photo-laden panels, full page or 2-page panels with the additional artwork of characters. This was probably the closest he got for a long time to doing a space comic book instead of people and of course they did start in space, but instead of ray guns and starships, he was able to give you machines and the vastness of space. And they were all jaw-dropping. The first one I saw, I remember I was in such awe of what had happened. And he was the reason that I stuck with Marvel for quite some time. Then he obviously was part of the return of Captain America. And with that, you had the character in both his own magazine and in the Avengers, which is something like DC was doing with their characters and the Justice League. You still had that grouping. The retelling of Captain America's origin was so much fun to read. And it was, at that time, it was pretty timely. Getting off on a tangent, Kirby also did Sergeant Fury. And with those, you had outlandish war stories. Things that would never or could never happen. Yet, they were the basis of so many other things with Hydra and AIM and SHIELD. They spawned so many other directions for Marvel.
Well, and he's doing Cap and Fury in the mid to late 60s, right?
Mid 60s, yeah, mid to late 60s.
Right.
Yes.
The idea that you could pull off successfully, I mean, almost anything war related during the Vietnam era, you got to be doing something right. Think about it.
True. Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's amazing in and of itself, just from a cultural standpoint. Because the war stuff was not big at that time frame. Nobody wanted any part of that.
No, that's true.
And so that you could do Captain America and Sergeant Fury. And I mean, there may be a couple of others here and there, but during that time frame, wow.
Well, what about his return to DC with the Fourth World characters and titles? Were you in on that? Did you think that was good stuff or not?
I wasn't in when it first hit because I was still kind of a little too young to be seen for that to catch my eye. But I've gone back and read those, and it's incredible what he was trying to do. And the thing is all this started out from the Jimmy Olsen book, because the numbers just weren't there, so they just turned it to him and said, "Okay, do whatever you want." The only thing was they went back and they didn't particularly care about how, or I don't want to say it that way. There was a certain image they wanted when Superman appeared, so they would go back and erase or just superimpose another artist's version of Kal-El's head. So the body is drawn by Jack Kirby, but the head is the more traditional, whether it's whoever, I don't know whose art it was actually off of.
Whoever was,
but it's kind
at
of
the time.
It's kind of funny if you think about that. But the fact that they just said, okay, you can go ahead and do that if you want to. So the beginnings of the Fourth World started in Jimmy Olsen, and then they spawned off into their own books, whether it was, Mr. Miracle or New Gods or the Forever People. And I mean, he's doing all of this, and then he's coming out with Commandy, OMAC. He was doing the Losers. He did a short run on Losers at the time as well. That's quite a bit of stuff. That's quite a bit. And we're not talking about the one shots where it was like the Sandman, or there was like a couple issues of Sandman, and that kind of stuff.
Yes, because earlier he had the free reign to bring back Sandman and make it more relevant in the DC universe. And this was the Sandman that had the sleep gun, the one that would knock out his rivals. a former member of the Justice Society. So when he stepped up and got the New Gods, he just took off. There were so many things that he was able to create. The characters of the New Gods, the idea of another two worlds in combat, yet you had the evil despot running one, and you had the father figure running the other. To me, this was Kirby at his creative best, being the one to step up and doing the writing as well as the artwork for them. He also had some of his workers actually step forward and become big names, and as a result, they ended up doing very well on their own. But these people were not copying Kirby, but they did lay plaudits for him too. And of course, shortly after the New Gods world, he returned to Marvel for a short run. And I thought that was pretty nice, because he bounced from Timely to DC to Marvel to DC and then back to Marvel.
And then going off and doing ones for some smaller publishers like Pacific and that kind of thing. But yeah, his second Marvel run, he was kind of just as kind of intriguing as his first run, because you're talking about Machine Man, you're talking about Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, which, we've got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur running around in books now. It's the same Devil Dinosaur, we just changed out the sidekick. The Eternals, he came back to did Eternals, did a run on Black Panther, did a really intriguing run on Captain America. God, so many others that he did just for those few years. It was just as prolific as it was, before. And then actually he went back to DC in the mid '80s, because he did the whole Superpowers books too.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
That is true.
So he had 3 tours to do with DC, and then technically 3 with Marvel, because if you can count Timely as essentially Marvel's early days. So
yeah, I think you would have to count it.
Well, I've said before, if there was a artist version or creator version of Mount Rushmore, he would definitely be on there.
Oh, sure.
I agree.
No doubt about it.
Maybe even in Washington's position of Mount Rushmore. Very prominent.
Okay. I don't think too many people would argue that.
Are they ranked like that on Mount Rushmore?
I don't.
I
guess so.
I guess he's the guy in front, but other than that, I'm pretty sure
he may be
Roosevelt's
up front.
Position is pretty much. I mean, he's freaking on Mount Rushmore. Once you get to that level, what difference is it?
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about you? What you brought up, Thomas, the Pacific comics and things like that. I remember reading Captain Victory, and I thought finally he gets to do his space opera.
Yeah.
but there were some that just couldn't get me going. He had his own universe with tops, and I just could not do it. I tried. But here in the article, they've got listed Bombast, and the guy looks like a pro bowler throwing a missile at you. And it was Kirby art, it was Kirby action, yet to me the story really lacked. It was weak. And I didn't see that any of those titles really stepped up and made a difference.
The Pacific stuff I hadn't checked out. Now, there's a ton of stuff still lying around that the state has not done anything with. There was one that was actually turned into a mini series. I need to go back and read it. I've got it as a collected form, as a hardcover form, and it was called the Galactic Bounty Hunters. And it was actually co-written by his daughter, Lisa. And some of the art, it's some of his art. So he's done some of the characters and that kind of stuff. But it was assisted by Michael Thibodeau, who, with not only art but writing it as well. I kind of remember kind of liking it. I mean, it was definitely oddball, but it was also Captain Victory was involved. But there's still stuff out there that you never know if they'll see the light of day. But he was still creating characters and stuff up until he passed. So there's got to be a lot of stuff out there still that just we're not aware of. But he was still creating.
Right, and if you think about it, I mean, hell, I'm sure even Leonardo da Vinci threw shit away.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not surprising to me that not every single thing that he created was a home run.
Oh, true.
So, it's all good. Not everything that gets published today is a home run, too, so.
Very true.
But I'd say his batting average is pretty damn good.
Yeah. I would take it. I think most would take it.
I think so, too.
Alrighty, any final thoughts before we wrap things up and move on? Other than happy birthday and thank you, Jack.
I'd say that wraps it up pretty well.
Yep.
Yes,
thank you to the king.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. When we come back, we'll have our weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for our weekly picks. And leading off this week is Les.
Do I gotta?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Les.
Okay, I'm going to bring up number 2 of 4 for Justice Inc., Faces of Justice. This is coming from Dynamite Entertainment, written by Kyle Higgins and Alex Shibao, art by Tom Mandrake. This is a character from the 30s. Once again, the Avenger steps up, and this is the man that can transform his face. His face is like putty, so he can make himself look like anybody. He was kind of the basis of the movie. Help me out, guys. Liam Neeson, Darkman.
Oh yeah, that one.
And in this comic, hopefully you're following this one because this is a good read. The Avenger has been arrested in the murder of a doctor, the scientist Dr. Sprecken. At the end of issue 1, he was seen in his jail cell. Now, in this issue, things started speeding up a bit with the Avenger fighting some thugs, and his group are trying to exonerate the Avenger. The question is obvious: who killed Dr. Sprecken? And it's been a good read so far. It's just a 4-issue series. Try it. I know you'll enjoy it.
Cool. A little pulpy fun.
Alrighty. I am up next, and for my first choice, I'm going to mention a one-shot that features a character that we mentioned earlier in this episode. From DC Comics, it's a Darkseid Special, written by Mark Evanier and Paul Levitz, with art by Scott Collins. If you're not aware, Mark Evanier, who's we all know from writing the Gru Tales and other books, but he was also associated Kirby's. He did a lot of writing for Kirby back in the day as well. So he's coming back and writing this one shot with Paul Levitz, who is a longtime DC name. Or actually, the tale is the Levitz is actually writing a OMAC story as a backup. So it's Mark Evanier and Scott Collins writing the Darkseid story, and then Paul Levitz and Phil Hester, well, this ought to be cool, writing the OMAC story. And then in addition to that, you have stories from Tales of the Unexpected and some material from Forever People #6, which was written, both of those were written and illustrated by the King himself. So,
nice.
The 100th anniversary, 100th birthday celebration ends from DC with this one. There's also just kind of a side plug, Black Racer Norman Shiloh one shot as well. Those are also from the New Gods, the Fourth World. So
cool.
I've been impressed with these books from DC so far. It's nice to have somebody step in and do a new story.
It's been great. The one I like the most so far has been the Sandman, because there were some great nods and Easter eggs in that one. So if you're kind of familiar with all the different incarnations of the Sandman, and if you know anything of the lore and all that, you'll definitely like that if you hadn't picked it up. So yes, I've been enjoying these as well too. Alrighty, Mikey.
All right. So my first pick is an IDW book. This is Dungeons and Dragons Frost Giant's Fury, #5. This is 5 of 5, so this is the end of the arc. And of course, our intrepid heroes, and if you're familiar with this series, you'll know I'm being sarcastic when I say intrepid heroes, are coming down to the wire against they're up in the mountains. It's very cold. They're fighting frost giants. They're fighting white dragons, and as the description I've got here states, the fate of the North hangs in the balance. This kind of book is, of course, as regular listeners know, is right up my alley. So of course I'm going to promote it a little bit. But this has actually been a fun arc too.
Woohoo! Good choice.
I say so.
Alrighty, Les, you're up again.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, let's see. This comic book is going to have ninjas, murder clowns, an unexplored past, and the creative team of Colin Bunn and Douglas Paskowitz. I'm talking about Tick 2017 #1 from New England Comics. They're bringing this out because Amazon is releasing their TV series, The Tick. And if you get a chance to see this, it is pretty funny stuff. They draw back on the TV series to the character that was depicted in the comics. This is to me, it's one I do want to read because Colin Bunn for first, and tied with that, 1A is the Tick, a very funny character. So I'm hoping that this is an ongoing. I believe it is, but this should be great fun. And once again, their cover exclaims that it's a first issue, which what they were very noted for in the past incarnations. So try it out.
I'm in.
Yep. Alrighty. I'm up next. And I am going with Your Pal Archie #2 from Archie Comics. Written and illustrated by Ty Templeton and Dan Parrott. I think I've mentioned this series before as a pick. I may not have, but I definitely did a review for it. This is old school Archie. Now he has a new look, but it's kind of the way the comics were done before, and currently still being done in the digest form, where the regular comics are doing the more of the teen drama and all that, which is done real well, and I'm happy for those that have enjoyed it. The books have been good, but I was glad to see this come back. I've said before, this is a nice palate cleanser. After reading some of the other books, having something like this that's just so lighthearted and you know, it's just a fun book. So it's kind of a nice little, it's just a nice change of pace. So, and of course it's Ty Templeton and Dan Parent. So come on.
Nice.
Alrighty. Okay, Mikey.
Alrighty. My second pick is a Dynamite book. And it is the James Bond 007 Moneypenny one-shot. And this is written by Jody Houser and drawn by new artist Jacob Edgar, with a very nice cover by Tula Lotay. And the Moneypenny in Dynamite's 007 series, ongoing series, is a serious badass. And so this is I would love for this to be the jumping point into a regular series for Moneypenny. That would be awesome. But it will be really cool to see her in action on her own. We did get a glimpse of how badass she is in a not too long ago arc of the main one of the James Bond arcs. It's hard to call it an ongoing series because they recently have had usually 2 going at a time from different creative teams. But yeah, I want to see this one. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued with this one. I'm surprised that it's a one-shot. I thought they would give her a little bit more of a chance, but who knows? This may do so well that they turn around and do a mini series, or hey, they may do a regular series with her. I don't know.
I'm hoping.
Maybe us talking about it, doing the solo films might help. I don't know. I mean, this was already in the pipeline, but who knows?
we can think that anyway.
Yeah, we can think that. Sure. All right, honorable mentions, Les.
I've got one from Boom Studios, Hero Squared Omnibus. This is a collection of a series that Boom Studios ran where the main character is a slacker on our world, but he is the legendary superhero Captain Valor in a parallel universe. The fun thing about this was that Captain Valor is accidentally transported to our world, and he moves in with Milo. From this, you just got chaos. And the main reason is the writer. Keith Giffen is the writer. Joe Abraham is the artist. Giffen is known for the funny Justice League of the 90s. And I got a feeling, well, I have read the first issue, so yeah, it is chaotic, but it's all relevant. It all lines up. So give it a try.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, this was definitely on my radar. So it should be a pretty cool book. Alrighty, my honorable choice is from Storm King Productions. It is issue 2 of 3, John Carpenter Tales of Sci-Fi Vault. It's written by James Ninnis with art by Andres Esperanza. This looks pretty cool. This is about a crew spaceship that's marooned on a ship that's called the Vault, and they're trying to find out what had happened. And of course, while they do that, members of the crew start disappearing as well. So you're going, okay, this is not good. This is not good. We'll see. Alrighty, Mikey.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, should be.
Alrighty, so my honorable pick is an IDW book. This is actually a collection. This is the collected recent run of the comic book History of Comics. They have entitled this particular arc The Birth of a Medium. This is by Fred Van Lente and Ryan Dunleavy, who were the Action Philosophers guys. And I know Les and I both talked about this series while it was running, because it is a really fun look at, and a very accurate look at, the early history of comics, dating all the way back to like the political comics of the late 1900s, late 19th century, the 1800s, sorry, and running up through like the 50s and 60s, with lots of interesting little tidbits and twists and turns in the fairly crazy story of how comics became what they are today. So I definitely recommend, if you have any interest in history just in general, this is a really cool way of getting that fix.
No doubt about that.
Yep. Been good stuff. Awesome. Some great choices, as usual. Any special mentions this week?
Not for me.
Nothing here either.
Actually, you know what? I will just as a reminder. I mean, it got mentioned when Les brought it up in his picks. But yes, by the time this episode drops, the new Tick series on Amazon Prime will be, I believe it's 6 episodes. I believe that's what I heard.
Oh, that's cool.
Will be ready to stream on Amazon Prime. So I will be jumping into that as quickly as I can.
Dun dun dun. Alrighty. Any other special mentions?
No.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. I do think we should mention a recent passing, somewhat comics related. He did have a comic for a while, both solo and then as part of a duo. But over the weekend, Jerry Lewis had passed away at the age of 91. I loved his work. And it's funny because I've sat back and kind of thought about it, and it's like, I don't think Martin and Lewis filmed. The Jerry Lewis films, I've seen, obviously, The Bellboy and Cinderella. Oh, God, I'm blanking on... The
Nutty Professor.
Nutty Professor, God, why was I blanking on that one out of all of them? You know, and then, of course, every Labor Day, I watched him on the telethon, and you know, he did so many great things. I know there's some people out there that don't like his work, and I know there's some people that who've had some bad experiences with him. But from what I've also heard, that he was a great guy. He was obviously a humanitarian. He tried to raise funds, you know, for muscular dystrophy and all that. So he made me laugh. So I will miss him. I mean, granted, he had basically disappeared. He had retired from acting. Although he did some stuff, he did some work in the last few years, but not a whole hell of a lot. But for obvious reasons. But I'll miss him. Thank you for the laughs.
Yep, I think he gets slighted a little more than he needs to be honest. I think his body of work is entertaining. Again, back to my reference earlier. Not everything a genius does is going to be genius. So
right.
I mean, there are probably some woofers in the bunch, but overall his stuff was good, and he did a lot of stuff, and a lot of it was good, and then he did some really good stuff as well. I mean, good in terms of, boy, I just realized I did that. Obviously, I'm getting tired. He did some good charity work. I mean, raised a lot of awareness for muscular dystrophy and a lot of money for research, and so yeah. Overall, good guy.
I have to agree there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. It kind of floored me that I've not seen any of the Martin Lewis films. I've seen a lot of Dean Martin films. I've seen a lot of Jerry Lewis films, but I've not seen the ones that they've been in. So I guess I got some homework to do.
That would be major homework.
After the secret project homework.
That's true. That's true.
Gotta do that first.
Yep. Business before pleasure.
Yep.
I agree. All right, so let's go ahead and do our regular shout-outs, unless y'all have some special shout-outs.
Nope.
Not here.
Okay. I'll just say, once again, Eddie, we missed you. We understand what was going on, and we will have you on again here real soon. So just keep doing what you're doing. First off, we would want to thank Maddie the Martyr for the music they provided for our little old podcast. We'll have a link to their page on our show notes. And if you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our podcast page, you'll see their logo. You can click on that, and that'll take you there as well. So thank you guys. Secondly, I want to thank the fine men and women of the Podern family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship by retweeting our little links. Thank you guys. We've been doing our best to return the favor. If you are looking for any kind of podcast, anything you can think of, best way to find it, go to Twitter, do a search, hashtag Podern Family as one word, and have fun. There's a ton of them out there. Great group of people. So thank you again for your support. And finally, thank you, dear listener. Thank you for downloading and checking out today's episode. We appreciate you checking out our previous episodes. We always value your feedback. If you'd like to contact us, there are several ways you can do that. The quickest way would be email. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and we will return your message as soon as possible. The second way you can contact us is through the form on our website. Once again, that's www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can click on the About Us page, and there's the form there that you can fill out. Feel free, and we'll return your message as soon as possible. You can contact us through social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. Feel free to follow us there and send us a message. We'll respond as soon as we can. You can also follow us on Twitter, which we obviously are on, at Fellowship Geeks. Feel free to follow us. You can follow our personal accounts. Mike is at Mikey Geek, and I'm at Tom TC Geek. Feel free to follow us and shout out if you like. And wherever you download our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube, if you would please rate us through whatever rating system they have, thumbs up, thumbs down, or star system, or whatever. And if you have a couple extra moments, a review would be awesome as well. Question of the week.
I think we have to go with what's your favorite Kirby moment, story, character, however you want to handle it.
There you go.
Tell us
That works for me as well.
Kirby thing.
Yep, that sounds good to me. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you got it.
Woohoo! So, final thoughts before we say goodbye.
Just thanks, everybody.
Same here.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. It's much appreciated, and we hope you have a good week. Until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,